The air's turning crisp, and the garden's starting to fade. Leaves fall, petals wilt, and soon, frost will paint everything still. But this isn't the end of the season, at least not yet, because right now, while the soil is still soft and the days are short, you have one last chance to plant something that will awaken before anyone else's garden does. These are the flowers that rest quietly through winter and bloom into color the moment spring returns. First on a list is Hellebore, the winter rose that blooms when everything else gives up. When most of the garden sleeps under frost, Hellebores quietly begin their secret work. This elegant perennial doesn't wait for warmth to shine. Beneath the soil, its roots strengthen through the cold, forming buds that open just as winter starts to loosen its grip. That's what makes planting it now, before the frost, a little secret that rewards the patient gardener when spring begins to stir. Hellebores thrive in part shade and moist, well-drained soil. Once established, they're nearly effortless, hardy, evergreen, and unfazed by cold, wet conditions. Their leathery foliage stays bold through winter, protecting the flower crowns beneath. With just a bit of mulch and a sheltered spot, they'll thrive year after year without demanding much. By late winter, their blooms appear, shades of ivory, blush, and soft plum glowing against the bare earth. It's quiet beauty, but unforgettable. While everything else still sleeps, Hellebores whisper that spring isn't far behind. Plant them under trees, near entryways, or along shaded paths where their early blossoms can greet you on cold mornings. They're proof that color and life can survive the frost, and even find grace in it. Next on the list, Cyclamen hedyrifolium, the graceful little flower that dances through the cold. Delicate yet determined, Cyclamen blooms when most plants retreat. Its heart-shaped leaves, marbled with silver, emerge just as the days grow short. And from that quiet foliage rise soft pink and white blooms that seem to float above the soil. Planting it in late fall gives it the cool temperatures it loves, letting it take root before the real chill of winter sets in. Cyclamen thrives in part shade and humus-rich, well-drained soil. It prefers protection from direct sun and loves to rest beneath trees or shrubs where the ground stays cool and moist. Once planted, it naturalizes gently, returning year after year with little help, spreading slowly to create carpets of subtle color. Through winter, its foliage remains fresh, patterned like frost on glass, catching the light of early mornings. When the rest of the garden fades to brown, Cyclamen offers movement and grace, tiny blooms nodding softly in the breeze, defying the season's stillness. Use Cyclamen along shaded borders, under deciduous trees, or even in shallow pots near entryways, where its intricate leaves can be admired up close. It's one of those plants that remind you, beauty in the garden isn't always loud. Sometimes it whispers through the cold air. Coming up next, Siberian Squill, the quiet spark of blue that wakes the garden before spring begins. When winter finally starts to fade, this tiny bulb is one of the first to break through the cold soil. Its intense cobalt blue flowers seem to glow against the last patches of frost, spreading like watercolor through the garden. Planting it now, while the ground is still workable, gives it the perfect chance to root and rest before performing its early spring show. Siberian Squill thrives in full sun to part shade and moist, well-drained soil. It's one of the easiest bulbs to grow. Just tuck it a few inches deep and forget about it. By the time you've moved on to other garden tasks, it will already be sprouting, ready to bloom as soon as the light returns. Once established, it naturalizes easily, filling corners and borders with effortless charm year after year. The beauty of this plant is in its timing. When almost nothing else dares to bloom, Squill appears like a secret, short-lived but magical. Even after flowering, its slender green leaves continue to feed the bulbs, quietly preparing for the next season. Scatter it beneath trees, weave it between stepping stones, or pair it with early crocuses for a soft, layered effect. Siberian Squill brings color when the world still feels asleep, a burst of blue that tells you spring is already on its way. Next on the list, grape hyacinths, the tiny burst of blue that brings joy long before spring fully arrives. Each stem carries clusters of small, bell-shaped flowers that resemble miniature grapes, glowing like sapphire beads against the still cool soil. When planted in late fall, they rest quietly through winter, gathering strength for an early bloom that brightens even the dullest corners of the garden. Grape hyacinths love full sun and well-drained soil. They're remarkably hardy, needing little care once planted. Just bury the bulbs about 3 inches deep, water once, and let the season do the rest. By early spring, they'll push through with dense, colorful spikes that stay upright even in windy weather. Over time, they multiply naturally, creating beautiful drifts that return every year. Their deep blue color pairs beautifully with soft whites and yellows, a visual cue that spring is near. Even after the flowers fade, their grass-like foliage stays green for weeks, keeping the garden looking alive while other bulbs begin to emerge. Plant grape hyacinths along paths, under shrubs, or around tree bases, where their vivid color can surprise you in early spring. They're small, simple, and incredibly rewarding, proof that even the tiniest blooms can change the whole feeling of a garden. Next, primrose, the gentle face of early spring that thrives on cool air and soft light. While most gardens still wear their winter tones, primroses begin to paint the ground with pastel color, buttery yellows, soft pinks, and creamy whites that glow against damp soil. Planting them in late fall gives their roots time to settle before the chill deepens, allowing them to burst into life as soon as daylight stretches again. Primroses prefer partial sun and moist, humus-rich soil. Keep them sheltered from harsh wind and water them regularly to maintain steady moisture. Once established, they ask for very little, and in return, they bloom faithfully year after year. Their rosettes of green leaves stay tidy, making them perfect for borders and containers that need a touch of life during the quiet season. As winter fades, their blooms appear low and bright, creating the first real color in the garden. They're a favorite for bees awakening from dormancy, offering nectar when almost nothing else does. Even after flowering, the foliage remains lush, bridging the gap between seasons with effortless beauty. Use primroses near walkways, under shrubs, or at the base of taller perennials. They shine in clusters and mix beautifully with bulbs like daffodils or crocuses. Modest yet full of charm, primroses are a gentle reminder that spring doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it begins softly, right beneath your feet. Coming up, crocus, the brave little bloom that announces spring before anyone else. Just when frost still bites the ground and the air feels heavy with cold, crocuses are already rising, tiny chalices of purple, gold, and white, breaking through the frozen soil. They're some of the first flowers to bloom after winter, and if planted in late fall, they'll be ready to surprise you the moment the sun starts to linger a little longer. Crocuses thrive in full sun and well-drained soil, and they love the chill. Plant the corms a few inches deep before the ground hardens, and they'll rest quietly through the cold months. They need almost no care, no fertilizer, no pruning, just time and patience. By early spring, they'll cover the ground with a carpet of color, feeding bees and brightening even the gloomiest corners. The beauty of crocuses lies in their timing. They're fleeting, blooming for just a couple of weeks, but their appearance is like a spark of hope after months of gray. Their petals close at night and open again with the sun, breathing rhythm into a garden that's been still for too long. Tuck crocuses into lawns, rock gardens, or beneath deciduous trees where they can catch the first light of spring. They vanish gracefully by early summer, leaving behind the memory of color that reminds you winter never lasts forever. And finally, daffodil tête-à-tête, the golden trumpet that turns the end of winter into a celebration. When the days are still cool and the soil feels heavy from frost, daffodils push through with their bright yellow blooms, like sunlight breaking through clouds. Plant them in late fall, just before the ground hardens, and they'll spend winter quietly preparing beneath the surface, ready to burst into joy when spring begins. Daffodils love full sun and well-drained soil. The tête-à-tête variety is compact and ideal for borders, containers, or small gardens. Plant the bulbs in clusters a few inches deep, give them a good watering, and leave them be. They'll thrive on their own, returning each year with even more blooms, proof that beauty can be both bold and dependable. Their cheerful flowers appear early, often while the air is still cold, bringing instant warmth to the landscape. They pair beautifully with crocuses, primroses, or grape hyacinths, creating layers of yellow, purple, and blue, the perfect harmony of early spring color. Even after flowering, their green leaves keep the garden looking alive while feeding next year's bulbs. Use daffodils to line walkways, fill containers, or brighten the edges of your beds. They're more than just a sign of spring. They're a promise fulfilled, the final proof that planting before the frost always pays off in gold. As frost settles in, these plants will be quietly at work beneath the surface, rooting, waiting, and preparing for the first light of spring. And when it comes, they'll be the first to bloom, long before the rest of the garden wakes. So grab your trowel and plant before the frost. Give your spring garden the head start it deserves, because beauty doesn't always sleep through winter. Sometimes it's just getting ready to rise.